off what Delia said earlier, going on about how Latinx people face nowhere near the same amount of oppression as black people. And that also comes from the fact that the Latinx community is horribly anti-black, mostly because a lot of Latinx culture is mixed in with white European culture that came, colonized the Americas, and automatically that anti-blackness was ingrained, despite a lot of indigenous people being very, 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 very dark-skinned, even close to black, if you really want to go that far. So there's both a privilege and there's also the fact that Latinx people have been trained to be anti-black, to be completely racist towards anyone that is not Latinx, to be 100% I mean, of course, I'm not talking white people. White people don't face shit. So that's why it's always really interesting whenever people bring up Latinx people in terms of racism, because they also forget that Latinx, for example, Hispanic can be, well, Hispanic specifically regards to Spanish-speaking people, which does not always mean people of color. Latinx does not also mean people of color though, either, which a lot of people forget that Latinx is an ethnicity compared to a race. So a lot of people talk about Latinx people, and they will forget that there are white Latinx people who are very much capable of being racist compared to Latinx people of color who are capable of racial prejudice and anti-blackness. So I just wanted to point that out because that's something that people often don't talk about at all. People don't like calling out the Latinx community, despite the fact that it really needs to be called out, because it's actually one of the bigger contributors outside of white people to anti-blackness overall.
Absolutely.
Everybody who is engaged in any kind of discrimination or oppression needs to be called out, even when they face their own. The black community discriminates against the queer community, and they need to be called out for it. And the Latinx community discriminates against the black community and the queer community and needs to be called out for it. And my own group, the Greeks, are largely extremely misogynistic, and that's not all of us by any means, but when I...
Don't you use those
just
two
said
words?
I
You use the bad words.
You actually just brought up my next question, so after you finish, I'm
Not all.
Sorry.
I was trying to figure out which two words you were talking about.
Yes,
I was waiting for Delia.
Yes, I did say that. When I first got involved in Hellenic religion, I practically had to start my own religion because of the misogyny that I faced. Because the people that I found accepted me as a woman, but only on the condition that I accept a woman's place, and I wasn't allowed to have a leadership position or talk about feminism in any way. And I had to accept that men were superior, and that's not okay.
Okay, so going back to the not all topic, which is everyone's favorite topic whenever they have to go to a very common thing for oppressed people to do is to call out their oppressors as a group. It's just easier to label as a group. Usually things taken care of more than if you're calling out individuals, if you call it an entire group. But a very common thing that people in those oppressing groups do is, oh, not all white people do this, not all queer people, not all white gays do this, not all cops, so on and so on. So I was just wondering if you guys had any general thoughts on the derailing, not necessarily the white guilt and the overall feeling of this backpedaling, but there's a massive thing with derailing in general. I was wondering if you guys could provide comments on that.
First, I'm going to go back and amend a previous statement. You know what? Fuck it. The Greeks are misogynistic.
And that's what needs to be done.
And if that makes you uncomfortable, good.
These conversations like that need to make people uncomfortable, and if you want to say not all, you're uncomfortable. Good. Here's the problem. It's like when you, I feel like we all know what the problem with that is, aside from derailing, which it does. It's like all of a sudden it's like we were having a topic about the racism black people face. All of a sudden we're talking about white people. And they're right not to be, and they're right not to be called racist. And it's so aggravating because of the fact that it's like you get to a point and it's like, as soon, I'm losing what little chill I had. As soon, I don't. Well, okay. There was a microscopic amount. It's gone now. So I like losing my chill. So It's so weird because it's like when you talk to a white person, I would say that I hate using white people as an example, but I really don't. When you talk to a white person about racism, racism doesn't exist. Racism is over. We've ended racism. We've gotten to the point where racism doesn't exist until you say something. That's what they will say every time you talk about something they want to talk, especially. Anytime you want to talk about an issue.
Birth certificate though.
Anytime you want to talk about an issue involving people of color, white people's response is racism is over. The second anyone says anything about white people, usually just pointing out that racism still exists, suddenly racism exists again, and it's all about white people. So the conversation gets completely fucking derailed.
I think the root of it, the distillation, is that people with privilege can't stand it when a conversation is taking place and it's not about them.
Yes.
Because they're used to it always being about them. They
Yeah.
get to see themselves as the default all day long.
Yeah. So, if we're talking about, white people are doing this and white people are doing that, if it doesn't, I think Cat Black said this, if you know what that is, but if it doesn't concern you, then it's not about you.
Thank you.
Okay. So for all these cops, not cops, but just say all these white people are doing X, and you're like, well, not all white people. Are we talking about you? You're my friend. When we hanging out, I'm pretty sure you're not doing
If
that.
we're
We're
talking
talking about your
about
other
white
friend over there.
If we're
That
talking about
moment. No,
white
just kidding.
people, and you're white,
Yeah.
and you're not doing the thing that we're talking about,
No.
then we're not talking about you. We're talking about the white people that are doing that
Doing
thing.
that thing.
And you know that, and you're just trying to make the conversation about you.
That's how
You can totally become that person by doing that.
Yeah.
By bringing yourself, by being the not all people, you have just made yourself that person
Exactly.
instantly.
Instantly.
If you're not that person, then you're the person who's able to admit that it is you. Whether or not you want it to be you, whether or not you're doing it intentionally, you can admit it. I had this come up today. Someone asking me about a post I made ages ago regarding white feminism, wanting to say that I'm being divisive, that I'm being racist against white people, not understanding that when you say white feminism, you're not saying feminists who are white. When you say white feminists, you're talking about people who engage in a particular brand of feminism that literally only cares about white, able-bodied, cis, straight women, first world women, to add to that and their problems. Whereas real feminism needs to be intersectional. It needs to be addressing all of these things. Otherwise, you're not addressing the issues of all women. If you're not addressing the issues of trans women and black trans women, how can you call yourself a feminist? Because you're not addressing all women's issues. But people, they see it's like suddenly because the word white was in there, you're talking about all feminists who are white. No, I'm talking about people who actually engage in what is referred to as white feminism. You get to this point where it's become one of my favorite things to say, that whenever that comes up, whenever there is metonymy, and that's what those things are called, is when you use something that represents something as a stand-in. In this case, white feminists who represent a feminist movement which is inherently racist. You would not have racism without white people and white privilege. So they are metonymy for it. They are standing for it, and it's perfectly acceptable. And actually, all those people who want to say, "Oh, it's not me," yeah, it is you. And you will say, I'm going to be completely point blank and honest. We are talking about you. Even if you're one of the people, we are talking about you. But if you are not one of the people that we're talking about, you're going to be fine with that. One of the very few people that we're not talking about, because when we say white people this, cis people that, we are actually talking about the majority. We are talking about 99.999% of the white people, of the cis people. And they're not, but there are people who's not that person. They're gonna shut up. One of my favorite things to say has become, "We're not talking about you, but if the shoe fits, feel free to strap on that bitch and wear it."
When you say not all whatever, you just became part of the problem, even if you weren't before. Because now, at the bare minimum, you are an apologist for whatever group is doing the thing, because you're derailing it. And I'm going to make a point for you, because trans women just did that 2 minutes ago, and I was trying to be an apologist for a bunch of misogynists. And that was stupid. And I called myself on it, after you did.
That was me.
That was a few people.
Yeah.
That was several people pointed it out. But yeah, because of the fear of repercussions for even saying it, for saying, yeah, this group of people is the cause of the problem, and then expecting those people to retaliate against you, expecting people to say, I didn't do that, and now I'm mad at you for implying that I did. And I don't give a fuck.
And that person just gives an excuse to everyone as soon as they do that.
Yeah.
As soon as one man says not all men, every man is a not all man.
Yeah, exactly. It frees, even if you say some, it frees every single person of accountability. Like, for example, I'm going to use Jasmine as a quick example. Jasmine and I have been friends for like 3 years, and you know, I'm transgender and she's cis, and if I'm upset about something cis people have done, and I say I'm really pissed off at cis people right now, Jasmine knows I'm not talking about her, but I'm not going to say I'm pissed off at some people, because then Jasmine might say, oh, Devin's not pissed off at me, so I don't need to check myself. And like, retrospectively, I'm best friends with Mallory, and if Mallory says fuck white people, I'm not going to be like, well, what about me, because you're in my car right now. I'm going to say, okay, I need to examine what she's talking about, and I need to check myself to make sure I'm not doing it as well.
Every single time.
Every single time.
No matter how many years it's been since you've said, yeah, I actually kind of do that thing sometimes. Every single time, if you're part of that group, you need to be examining yourself. Do I do this thing that hurts people? And if I do, then I need to fucking stop. And if I don't, then I need to stop other people from doing it.
People with privilege who are actual allies learn to recognize that they do have to constantly check themselves and constantly be open to accepting that they are being racist or transphobic or misogynist or homophobic, and they do. You know, you pick on Jasmine. I'm going to pick on Kelly because we've had moments where Kelly has been transphobic outwardly. And it made, I didn't want to say anything because I'm like, ooh, but I had to. And so, but, you know, when I did that, her immediate response was one of concern. I was afraid it wouldn't be, because that's the experience 99.999% of the time. But her thing was concern. An ally recognizes that they never know the full extent of their privilege. They can never start to really feel like they do know their privilege, because the second they do, they're not going to be open to listening. They're not going to be open to accepting their privilege when it's pointed out.
As you and Catherine are probably, well, all three of you are probably very aware, in the beginning of the year, a lot of trans women were killed, specifically in Brazil. A lot of them. And coming as someone who was raised very, very much in a white household with a Brazilian mother who was very much a woman of color, but still I was assimilated into my dad's white family, white culture, so on and so on and so on. So around the age of 17, 18, I started accepting the fact that I'm Brazilian. I started trying to embrace it, just breaking out of the fact that my dad had tried removing that from me. But then right around that time, I started realizing, wow, Brazil is one of the most anti-queer places in the world. And you have trans people being killed so often in Brazil. And I was just wondering, because that happens in other Latinx countries a lot too, so I was wondering if you had general advice for people who are trying to accept, because you were in a very similar situation to me, weren't you, where you were raised in a very mixed household that was very whitewashed,
right,
especially Latinx. So I was wondering if you had any advice for people who were in a similar situation, just to keep hope, because I, as a non-binary trans person, that's very disheartening. It makes me realize if I were to ever go home, there's a good chance that I would have a very shitty time. And it's sad because I try accepting a new home and then automatically it's taken away just about. So I was just wondering if you had general advice for queer Latinx people who are trying to come to terms with that. It's a very heavy topic, I'm very sorry.
It's heavy topics or topics that need to be addressed. It's difficult. Specifically, especially it's poignant for me, that especially having that question directed at me, because I get those questions. I get questions for advice all of the time, several times a day, especially from really young transgender people, and it breaks my heart, like this question is right now, especially because of the fact that living in America, we have a fucking transphobic society, but when you look at the numbers, Brazil has to be the worst place for a transgender person to be, period. At Transgender Day of Remembrance last year, God. So two-thirds
yeah.
of the names you heard a Spanish or Portuguese based name,
And most of the
and you heard Brazil.
most of the homicides out of Brazil are not reported. There's an estimate that's around 40 since January this year, and I believe only 2 of them have been reported as transgender homicides.
So, advice for Latinx people in Brazil. Advice for Latinx people having to watch this.
I'm saying in general, just because, I mean, sure, I can come from the example of Brazil, which, as you guys said, is pretty much the worst case of Latinx, or even in general transphobia. But I was just asking for advice in general, because it's very prevalent in almost every single Latinx community.
My advice almost always comes down to action. People ask me how to handle something emotionally. I'm no good at that. I'm never any good at that. My advice always comes down to when a person asks me, this person's being transphobic in my life, how do I cope with this? My response is always, look, I know you've got a lot of fond memories with this person that you're never going to be able to get over. I deal with that every day. I know that you want to fix this, and you can try to, but in the end, you may not be able to. So you're going to have to take action. You're going to have to cut this person out of your life probably at some point, like I've had to do so many times, more than I even thought I would after coming out. And the reason is because our feelings are immensely important. Our emotions, every thought, every single one that we have is just immensely important. And they can be overwhelming. But I feel like the biggest thing I learned from the experiences that I went through, and so the biggest thing that I want to be able to teach other trans people who may not have lived through that exact thing yet, I use the word yet instinctively because it's going to happen at some point in most cases, to trans women of color anyway, that I can no longer just sit and let my feelings occur inside of me, or be something that just leads me to a release like crying or talking about them. I have to do something that will make a difference in the situation. That's the whole reason I do everything I do. When I first started, I feel like some people may think, because I started my YouTube channel actually before the worst events in my life happened. All those videos are gone now because things changed so drastically. And before then, I was just this person who I wanted to be another Julie or Gigi Gorgeous. You know, I wanted to be the tips and tricks, but it became I couldn't not do everything I could to change things, and I have like everyone said, I have no chill. And I usually don't fucking censor myself.
For one.
Huh?
Says we Latinx for one. But.
I feel like that's something that comes along with that and the eyebrows.
The eyebrows.
So I can say that though, because I have the eyebrows. So I had to make myself laugh. Whenever you that is my advice, is that you have to take action that will change things to cope with it, because otherwise the society is not going to change unless we change it. We can't wait for white cis people to change it. We have to take it into our own hands. And our feelings are not going to move people. Our actions have to move people. Laying those feelings out, it can be one of those actions sometimes, because occasionally your feelings will move someone when they see that you're a human being in distress. That's a pretty powerful thing. People see that and they realize that something needs to be done in a lot of cases, but in a lot of cases that's not what we do, and justifiably. We have so many reasons to be afraid. And just briefly, I'm going to bring up that Indigo. It was very poignant how she mentioned that she doesn't present the way that she would like to in most cases. Catherine and I do that all the time. There's a thing I've been reading about recently, so I'm not an expert on it in any way, shape, or form. I don't think I could be an expert on it without being black. But it's the paper bag theory of racism, where, you know, if you're the color of a paper bag or lighter, you're not going to experience as much racism. If you're that color or darker, you're going to experience even more. And so that's obviously one of the biggest things that you're looking at, like when we talked about earlier, the differences between what a Latinx person will face versus what a black person will face. And indigo is a very, you know, dark, black, genderqueer, trans person. So demi-gender person. So whereas Catherine and I know that we can get away with presenting as female without really necessarily facing a significant level of violence, Indigo knows that she does not have that privilege. Indigo knows that she will put herself in much more danger doing that. So we have really good reasons to not want to take action. I feel they're very valid, so which is why I've never ever told anyone that you have to get out and be out. You know, you have to come out to everyone. You have to be in the public face, etc. I've told people that they need to be activists, but you can do that without being in the public face. You can do that without coming out. But I've never told anyone that they have to come out, that they have to be who they are. I've told them it's probably inevitable, but that there's no pressure because of the fact that it's like, you'll have to face that violence, and our safety is not a currency to be exchanged for progress. It is when we choose to make it one, which is my choice. But I'd never judge anyone for not making that choice or not pushing that choice, you know, on anyone. But we have to put those feelings in action, and you can do that without having to come out, without having to be in people's faces, without people having to even know who you are. But it needs to be done when we have those feelings, when we have those fears, wondering when it's going to be next, because I have that fear every night. I'm sure Indigo has that fear every night.
You don't have to be in front of the camera to make a difference, because somebody has to be behind the camera.
You can be behind an anonymous username on Tumblr and still be making a difference if you're getting those feelings out.
Not as much of a difference as you're making if you actually show up for events, but you are making a difference.
And I feel like we don't even, because there's no quantification of how big a difference someone is making, in my opinion.
At least if you're in that group compared to, let's say, a white person not showing up to the events or not doing things, a trans person not wanting to be out in public doing certain things.
Right.
That's where that comes into play compared
Yeah.
to a white person, which would be in your case what you were saying.
That's my safety or activism work.
Yep.
Whereas if you're white, straight male, your safety's not at risk doing activism work. It's just not.
And I want to touch on that. I'm kind of picking on you a little bit because I don't feel like we need to quantify how much of a difference someone does makes, because of the fact that I may be here on camera with people knowing who I am and want to do me violence, in the public face, at public events, doing public things, putting myself in harm's way, physically, in a lot of cases. But I would not even be able to be here if it weren't for those, you know, teenage, preteen, transgender people who are hiding behind that username, who have not come out yet, who give me the reason to do this. You know, I do my best. It broke my heart the other day realizing that I'm starting to get to a point where I'm not going to be able to answer every single thing I get, just because I'm not going to be able to see every reblog, every comment. It's just not going to be possible. And it broke my heart, not only because I had to realize that there are people out there who may put something that I may never be responded to just because I'll never see it. I still do everything I can. If I see it, I'm going to respond to it. But it's not just because of the fact that those people need someone. It's really largely because of the fact that I need someone, which I feel is very, very easy for people to forget. I put out this attitude that I've got no chill, that I take no shit. but the only reason I'm able to do that is because I have those people to show me the importance of it, who I want to be able to feel safe one day. I don't want them to have to be doing this, and also they remind me so much. Because I mean, I'm neurodivergent. There's a horrible stigma with it, and I accept that. I have borderline personality disorder. It's a horrible mental illness to have to deal with. And when you're in this position, you get haters. You get people who are going to be negative towards you all the time, and they have so much more of an impact on me than, you know, one person saying the littlest thing will wreck my day. You can ask Catherine; she's seen it. You can ask Kelly; she's seen it. I'll become a moping, sobbing mess of self-hatred in a heartbeat. And without those people who are there doing those little things, I literally, I got just the event that Devin was speaking about, where they had me end up blocking someone. That was almost a day-ruining event. And it was purely the fact that I vented about it on Tumblr, and people just started sending me the most wonderful, affectionate messages of the best compliments that I would never see anyone giving to me, but then reading them and reading all the people saying this, well, you know what, they must be right. And I was able to keep going, make a video, and do more work on starting another one, which wouldn't have even happened.
The emotional problem is, here's this enormous issue that is facing us, and most of the pain that comes with that is, I can't fix it. And if you get out there and actually do something, maybe you're not going to see a change today or tomorrow, but the feeling that you made a difference, or even that you're trying to make a difference, gives you back a little bit of that sense of personal power, of maybe if somebody makes a difference a little bit at a time, if enough of us try to make a difference, maybe things will get better.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I think we were talking about, I guess when we were doing the vagina monologues, like, for me that was very important, not only for, I guess, activism in the community when we did the trans monologue, but also the fact that, because these two are already out, and they're, and they're who they are, and I'm coming in, going on stage, like, not knowing who's in the crowd, not knowing, if somebody knew me from the, and, having to take that, I guess, a leap of faith almost in a way, to take that chance, take that risk that normally I wouldn't take. Like, I'm just thinking, I'm 30, like 10 years ago, I would have never done something like that. That would have been like, oh, hell no. Like, there would have been no way possible that I would have went on stage and did any of that. So for me to take the chance and to go up there and to do a monologue and do other things, is, for me, I guess, a part of me trying to do my best to help, and it's not only, it was helping myself, and helping people understand what our problems are, through the monologue and just through the other monologues. And so it was just, it just gave me more confidence. It just gave me more, I feel like after every single little thing I've done up to this point has, helped me to become a better person. And so I think with every trans person, or every young trans person, I think when you take that next step over whatever the first fear is, like, okay, who's gonna find out? And then you go over that, what I'm saying? And then each little thing that I've overcome, and I've talked to my therapist about, and her and April, if you know April Glenn, who's here, like, at the counseling center. I mean, if you would talk to Tamara and April for like 2 years ago, and then you talk to them about me, like, how was Indigo 2 years ago compared to now? They would give you a lithium of just, battle after battle after, or story after story of what I've done. And it's funny because I'm a person who is more future oriented thinking. So I'm always thinking like, man, I need to do this in the future, do that in the future, but I'm never thinking about the present as much as I should. And so I'm not appreciating it as much. So I'm always thinking about the destination rather than the journey itself. And so when it's good to have, people like everyone in here and then people like Tamara where they kind of stop me and go, look, you came in 2 years ago, your senior year, college, and you were really unsure of yourself. And you were talking to us and you were near crying, trying to figure yourself out. And then now look at you, you're like, you went on stage, you're a little more sassier for some reason. Like, the chill is still there, but it's a little gone like it was. No, I'm just kidding. It's a little less gone.
I'm working on that.
Yeah, but you've grown so much compared to when you first came in, and I think for a lot of young trans people, when you look at somebody like Delia, or look at anybody who does YouTube videos, or maybe Laverne Cox or Janet Mock or anyone, I'm pretty sure if you either look backwards on their life or you start at the beginning, you can see they kind of had maybe some similar things that you went through, and so now you can look at it and go, wait a minute, so they had the same fears and insecurities I did, and they were Black and trans, and so they had to go through. I'm not trying to be a person, but you know what I mean. Like they maybe went through a little bit more harsher things, and so you have to look at your own life and go, what can I do to, help myself and then help the community? Because I feel like you help yourself more, and then that, once you get yourself in a position where you're more confident about yourself, because I feel like when you have, this could be anybody, cis people or trans or anything, there's probably, I would say like there's a few people in my life that I knew before I knew everybody in here that were really confident about themselves. They really walked with like, it wasn't cockiness, but it was just like, they knew who they were. They knew what they were about. They knew what they were gonna do, and they just had this like, I'm good, and then, like anything that comes my way, I handle that. Unfortunately, one of the people I knew died, but in a motorcycle accident. But he was like, I used to work with him at a movie theater, actually on 9 Mile Carmike, a long time ago. He was just a guy who just like, everybody loved him. He was, a great guy and everything. He just had this like, just this type of way that he just knew, like he just had it together all the way. And I feel like when you're a trans person, the battles that you go through help you get it together. And so once you get to that certain point where as you're helping people out and helping yourself get it together, then the issues that you face are not as harsh anymore. They're not as terrible to face when you were in the beginning. It just feels like the monsters are not as powerful as they once were. And so now you can just keep, you can help others along the way, like what she was saying with, younger people, and you can really make a difference that way, so.
Yeah, I feel like people are a lot more overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Especially when they're younger.
Yeah.
With that, because people do feel, I feel like that's part of the reason that question comes up,
Yeah.
and maybe, I don't know, maybe part of the reason you directed it at me, aside from being Latinx, but.
It's just because you're Latinx, but you go ahead.
Okay, well, I mean, I feel like that's the reason I get those questions a lot of the time. Is that people, they know at some level that the solution is I need to do something, but they don't know. I mean, it's like, I always feel so humbled because I came from a lot of those places like you came from. I was so much of a wreck, so much unable to hold myself together, stand up for myself, much less a whole bunch of other people. And you get there. You get there by doing these things. So if you've got those feelings, that fear, and the things that keep you up at night very justifiably, and how can I fix this? Do anything. Do anything. Start your own YouTube channel. If you can. If you can't, then do smaller things. Start a blog. You know, if you can't be in person, don't use your name if you can't use your name, if you're not out yet, and all these other things. You know, if you're in this place where you feel so powerless and that there's nothing you can do, you know, just like with me, write a letter to an activist, you know, letting them know how much you appreciate the work that they do, letting them know because they probably need it. And when you get to that point, you know, you start with these little small things, and before you know it, you get to this point where you start looking back and you hear people saying things about you, bringing you up in sentences with people and making comparisons and being like looking back, and it's like, okay, I still don't agree with you doing that, but I can see, you know, if things still progress, just looking back at where I came from, how it's like, I can see why, you know. Look at you specifically, Catherine. You're making that comment because it's like, you know, you can see where it's like, you'll get there one day. You'll get to that point where you'll be capable of doing so much. It'll be so empowering, you know. And we have to do it because, you know, how many other trans women are there out there who want a music career? Who, you know, who feel like they can't specifically because they're trans.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I guess.
No, go ahead.
So I guess another thing you can do is like, you know, just, if you don't want to do all that, like you can go old school and just write a journal, right? You make a journal of your adventures, but make a journal of your life and what's going on with it, or a diary, that's what they call them, sorry. But also you just, like you could do one thing like, you could write down like your fears and write down, or maybe make a mental picture of or mental list of what your fears are. And then as you begin to start getting over one over another, you may want to just check one off and then check one. And then as you then you go back and look a year later and you're like, wow, I was scared of that. I was scared, you know. And some of them are, obviously a lot of those fears are definitely warranted and definitely you need to be cautious of. But some of them were like, you know, are things that it was you a little bit, you know, but some of it's, and most of it's society. So I think once you conquer those things about your life that you get over, I think once you become like this person who can just, you know, take on different situations without I guess you can take it on without having the like, oh, you know, moment, or like, you know, that fear of just being caught in a situation. You can handle it with more confidence.
Hey everyone, thanks again so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw today, don't forget to hit that like button and share so your friends can enjoy it too. There's more where that came from, including activism and awareness videos, tutorials, you can follow my transition, and even check out some of my music. I also want to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters because y'all make this channel possible. If you're not a patron yet and you want to find out how you could get awesome rewards like autographed pictures from my modeling shoots, just go to www.patreon.com/DeliaMelody to find out how you can sign up. See you next time and be yourself.